Hello and welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I am your producer and co-host, and today I'm really excited to bring you an interview that I did with Joy Sorich of Cup of Joy Tea. Now, Joy did not always work in culinary or tea production. She actually had a career change and really found a passion for different concepts around food and nutrition. In this episode, we delve into the idea of mindful eating and have some awesome tips and takeaways for all of us to practice some mindful eating moving forward. She also talks a bit about her company, Cup of Joy Tea, and how you can get a hold of her to get some amazing, chemical-free, organic, delicious tea that will help serve you and your health and wellness goals. So, before we jump into the episode, let's hear a word from one of our sponsors. This episode of the Inspire Life podcast is brought to you by Inspire Health Coaching, helping busy professionals overcome food addiction to reclaim their energy and optimize their lives. Our holistic approach to coaching will help you find new realities of peace and ease in meals, movement, and mindset. Through creating a wellness vision, long-term goals, and weekly experiments, you'll find yourself creating a new life, all with the support and accountability of a trusted coach who has been through it. If you want to learn more about what we do, how we work with people to accomplish their health and wellness goals, or to set up your initial consultation, text us at 651-500-8162. Or if you have ideas for the podcast or blog, know someone who might be an awesome guest, or even just if you want to connect more with someone who's been there, don't hesitate to text or email us at michael@coachkrug.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. Welcome to the Inspire Life podcast. My name is Michael. I am your producer and co-host, and today I'm really excited to be interviewing Joy Sorich. And Joy, I'll let you explain more about yourself, but we're going to be talking about food. You're a chef and you've worked with food for a long time. So if you want to just start by maybe telling our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me on this podcast. It's a subject I'm super excited to be talking about because it's kind of like a concept that we've gotten away from. I think that was a little more common years ago, but it's not so much now with the way our world is so hectic. But my background through school was food science and nutrition, and I worked in the food manufacturing food industry for a while, and then flipped over into pharmaceuticals because I was more interested in science and how the body works. And then I ended up going back into the food industry because that was really where my passion was, is that, most times we need to end up at the doctor because we don't know what we're supposed to be eating. And so I thought, gosh, I think I could make more of an impact by not promoting giving pills at the doctor's office, but actually promoting good health through food, because the body does work as a whole system, not just a one disease state at a time. So anyway, I went back into the food industry. I taught culinary classes, and I worked for a tea company for a few years, and through that has even made me more aware of intuitive eating and intuitive drinking just by drinking teas. So I have started an organic tea company, and that's what I've been doing the last few years.
Awesome. Yeah. And I like how you mentioned how, food is such an important part of what we do. And obviously you've kind of dedicated your life to understanding the science and how our bodies interact with the food we eat. But I really like how you mentioned that so often we find ourselves in doctor's office and taking medications and doing these things because of our decisions related to food that led up to that point.
Yes, definitely. I couldn't agree more. If you think about it, when we're children, small children, you obviously babies cry when they're hungry or their digestive system is ready to process everything out. Or they hurt. I mean, they usually tell you what they need. And I think that is, if you get back to the basics about, from the time you're born to the time you're old enough to eat solid foods, to when you get to be, grade school kid and you're going through the school lunches or you're taking stuff from home, your habits start to change based off of what is going on in your home via community, whether you're sitting at the table and, collectively as a family, or if you're in your car eating a burger or whatever, but most of us have switched what our body intuitively would have wanted to do, like, oh, I feel hungry, I think I'll go grab a banana or whatever, versus those cues we get, oh gosh, it's 8 o'clock, I got to get to work, I've got to eat XYZ, or I don't have time to eat a meal and I'm just going to shove it in my mouth and go. Or maybe I won't eat at all and I'll just wait till 9 o'clock tonight, and usually you may or may not even be hungry by then, but you're just you pushed your body into a whole different way of being versus what it really wanted to do when you were little. So there's that piece of intuitive eating. But there's other pieces of it, like how do you signal your digestion and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what you're saying is so powerful. I mean, you talk about how when we're born and as children, our intuition is spot on. We know it's time for me to eat. It's time for me to go make a BM. It's time for me to go do whatever. And the signals are different when we're young, but we're really in tune with it. And then what I'm hearing is that, some of our cultural ideas and societal norms and things that we grow up just learning and accepting, we kind of get torn away from that intuitive side of food and wind up just doing things because that's the way that other people are doing them, or that's, it's breakfast time, so I'm going to have breakfast, or it's lunchtime, so I'm just going to have lunch. And, another part that you mentioned that's so important too is we don't really, a lot of times, at least in our culture, we're not taking the time to really consider what it is we're eating or what state of mind we're in while we're eating or how we're going about approaching our meals. What we're eating is one thing, but what I'm hearing is that intuitive eating goes beyond that, and it's the whole experience around the meals that we're consuming.
You couldn't have hit that more spot on, Michael. As you were talking, I was thinking, what made me so passionate about the idea of really trying to talk through intuitive eating? And, even when I taught classes on cooking, we don't really get into that. You even have a schedule where you say this is what we're going to be learning, and you teach knife skills or saute skills, but you don't really start, they get down and eat and they need to be out in 2 hours. But what I think is more important is, as I'm sitting here drinking a cup of tea, and that's kind of what my trigger to the passion of this is when I started my tea company. I'm thinking, why do I love tea so much? Or just sitting down and having a cup of this. And I thought, it's what's in the tea, but it's also, more importantly, when you get up in the morning, and for me, it has become a sacred time where you're just kind of like waking up, reflecting on what you need to do for a day. It's almost the most quiet time to really, for me anyway, to really reflect on how do I want to be intentional. I usually have a cup of tea, and then when I do that, you're brewing it, you're smelling it, you're actually getting your the saliva in your mouth to start activating. And that enzyme in your saliva actually helps to break down carbohydrates, and it starts the process of your gut to start preparing to receive that. And that's all through smell and looking at like, like to look at the tea leaves when it comes out. I like to smell it. I like to smell what's coming out of the mug, and then you're sipping it, and that first sip, it's sort of like, so you're really, for me, that's centering me into what I'm about to do through drinking my cup of tea, or what am I going to eat. And you've got your digestive system kicking in to receive the food. And then through doing that, you've actually created that environment where your body's going to have the best result in absorbing what you're eating. Hopefully it's going to be vegetables and things that produce those phytochemicals to really power up your immune system. And that's the other piece of intuitive eating, is when you get to that point, what is it you're going to put in your mouth? But I think for me, at least, having been more aware of eating, even just through starting the morning with tea, has made me more aware of, you really start to think about, what do I want to eat to be my best self, and to feed my body where it's going to honor your body, which I think is kind of the concept that we all, at least I know you and Mel, that is, Dr. Mel, that is like the thing, is like you want to honor your body in all ways. And for me, it's through the eating and drinking of things like this. So yeah, you hit right on that.
Yeah, and you bring up another point that so many of us have never even heard of or considered, is that, our body is intelligence, and the digestive system, it goes way beyond just the moment when we're eating and then we swallow the food, right? Like you said, just getting prepared and having that cup of tea, your body is actually starting the digestive process. Your saliva is creating an enzyme to break down carbohydrates. I've even heard and I've read things that if we see something that is really high in, like, in simple carbohydrates versus complex, that our body will start to create insulin and get ready, whether we eat the food or not, right? Like, just seeing an apple could actually have our body create insulin and get ready to eat that,
Yes.
whether we eat it or not. So
Yes.
really what I'm hearing is it's more than just chewing food and swallowing it. It's really an entire system that we know that our body is having an intelligent response to get ready to break down and intake and turn into energy, whatever it is that we're going to be eating. And just, with that, building that back into the intuitive eating part, and understanding, what it is we're eating and how we're eating it. What are some things that you would recommend for people? Maybe if you have someone who, me personally, I went through food addiction, right? Like fast food addiction, and it was really bad, and my health struggled. And I know that intuitive eating is a concept that maybe seems glamorous from the outside looking in and doesn't maybe make a lot of sense. So I guess for our listeners, and with your expertise, where would you have people start? Like, what is something that people can start when it comes to mindful or intuitive eating, just to get the ball rolling so they can see some success with it? Does that make sense?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's interesting. I had a conversation about this with my husband last night. We are very different eaters. He is on a schedule, very tight schedule. He barely has time to eat. And when he eats, he comes in and he digs in the fridge. He comes out, and I, try to have healthy stuff for him to grab. So there is that, the preparation. Taj yourself, what kinds of foods do you think you could eat that you could pre-prepare, or things there's Whole Foods has some great stuff you can grab that are pre-done, or you can just add a quinoa to it. We do that sometimes, but he will grab food and then it may even be good, but he will sit down. He doesn't even give his body a chance to create the saliva to get it down, which also, it helps with, the saliva also helps get the food, it kind of breaks the food down, but it also helps it slide down easier. So, and again, he interestingly does not absorb carbohydrates well. We found it out with his stool sample, but it makes sense because he eats fast. He doesn't really time to check in and go, hey, I guess I need to create the saliva and kind of settle things so I know what I need to do to break those carbs down. So going down the eating, just don't wolf your food down. If you could chew it, they do it 15 times. If you could just chew it enough to like get flavor out and swallow it, that's the thing. And also importantly, you consider checking in with your body and going, okay, between 1 and 10, 1 being I'm starving and 10 being I'm so full I'm not going to eat for a week, where are you in that spectrum? Are you like a 1? You probably should maybe have considered eating when you're about a 3, where you're just starting to feel like, gosh, I think I'd like to have a snack, versus, oh my gosh, I'm starving and I'm in the grocery store and I'm going to go grab every bag of potato chips and candy bar or whatever I can find just to curb that hunger. So that's another thing. And then when's a good time to stop eating? Again, if you're speed eating, which is my husband, he eats so fast, he doesn't give his gut time to his brain to signal, his gut to signal his brain to say, hey, I'm full, I don't need any more. He's usually overeaten because he's eating so fast. So you can give yourself time where your body can signal to you, I could be more like a, between 1 and 10. I'm about a 7 right now. That's, you're filled, but you're not overeat. You haven't overeating, but you feel satisfied. That's about where you should be. So those are probably 2 things. Slow down, consider how fast you're chewing your food. Are you starving, or are you just starting to feel like, hey, I'm kind of hungry, I think I'm going to have something? And then as you're eating, am I like, oh my gosh, there's an extra piece of quiche over there, and oh gosh, it was so good, I think I need to eat that extra piece? Or can you just check in and go, between 1 and 10, where am I really? Am I like at the 7 now? Or, that piece I could just label on it, because I have to be careful. If Mike likes something and I don't say, hey, I want a piece of that later, it'll be gone. So I need to, and I give him that suggestion. Hey, I see what you've just eaten. You can't, I'm not gonna steal it from you. You can just put it in the fridge and let your body tell you when you're hungry again, and you can eat it again.
There's so much wisdom that you just threw out there. And, to quick touch on that point you're talking about, and that's something that I struggled with and still do sometimes, is that, sometimes we are in more of that sympathetic state around food. And, whether it's a real threat or not, our instincts tell us, hey, if there's food there, it might not be there later. Right. So sometimes, especially if we're stressed out, it's easy. We just want to consume it all, because our amygdala isn't necessarily processing and saying, hey, I can put that in the fridge and save it for later. And that was something with me, with my food addiction, that took me a long time to be able to have that self-control and say, you know what, I'm full. And, the points, I'm taking notes as we go. I don't know if you saw me writing, but
yeah.
The things that you said, first and foremost, having healthy things available. And especially if we're really busy, having something that's easy and quick to prep, but that's also very healthy. Something that you said that's so big is just sitting down and like really just being present with our food. You mentioned earlier, eating in the car, our body isn't actually ready to break down food. So it's going to sit there and wait until it's actually ready to start digesting. That's such an important thing. Slowing down. You mentioned, chewing your food 15 times so that you actually taste it, and so that our taste buds are getting the satisfaction as well, not just wolfing it down really quick. And then I really liked what you said about that checking in on that 1 to 10 scale, both before and after. So recognizing like, hey, I'm at like a 4 to 10 right now, my hunger. Maybe I just need a small snack, and that will get me through until, I have a meal later. And then on the flip side, eating some, waiting and saying, okay, I feel like maybe I'm like an 8 out of 10 full right now. That's plenty. I can save the rest for later. And I know there are other cultures, I want to say Japan and specifically, where, they only eat until they feel 75% full. And that's the norm, rather than, in the United States, it's the unfortunate truth, but a lot of times we're a little more gluttonous and we eat until we're just like full, right? So a lot
Yes.
of really good, and just those are really simple points that any of us can start to implement. And something for me that I've actually realized is tuning more into my kind of circadian rhythm and what my body really needs. I've been doing really well lately. I have my last meal at like 6:30, and I just recognize that I don't need to intake more energy, right? Like night eating used to be a huge issue for me. And it's something that just by sitting down and really, being with my body and recognizing I don't really need food, but maybe a cup of tea would be nice tonight, before bed. So,
well, and tea actually, some of the elements in tea actually can suppress that craving as well, and you can still feel satisfied. And another point you mentioned, between, how full am I, between a 7 and a 10, and that the Japanese culture only eats 5% full. And that tells me that they know that their brain has to catch up to signal, that the amount in the food, the brain has to know. If you eat too fast, you don't have that signal in your stomach and your brain to tell you when you're full. And that's the problem of overeating, when people are eating too fast. And I think that's why they always say chew 15 times, because to signal your brain, or your brain needs to signal your stomach.
The overarching theme here, what I'm hearing a big part of this is that we're in a culture where we're just go, go, go all the time. And we really have gotten lost from what it means to truly eat, right? Like food is one of the most intimate interactions that we have with the environment around us. So let's all slow down and take time, because our body isn't made to just go from, working really hard, eat, and then go straight back to that. We're never going to actually fully feel satiated, right? We need to slow down and wait and let our bodies actually process the food and recognize that we are well fed, we have enough energy, and there's so much power in taking our time with food, right? And even expressing gratitude for where food comes from and what we have in front of us. So
that's exactly right. And it's the way you honor your body, another way to honor your body.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. Well, we're running close to the end of our time. I do want to ask, you had mentioned earlier your tea company, Cup of Joy. So
Yes.
If you can maybe just give us a little bit about that in case any of our
Absolutely.
any of our listeners are interested in getting some tea from you.
Thank you. So the company name again is cupofjoytea.com. And the reason I started the company was because I found, as I was working for a tea company and learning a lot more about tea, that a lot of times tea is not as clean as you think. And I drank a lot of tea anyway. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and green tea was like my go-to, and as a way to move forward in my health. And I drink probably 6 to 8 cups a day. And so I thought, gosh, I drink a lot of tea. I probably should see how clean this is. So, I was drinking some organic tea, but not all organic tea. And I thought, I'm going to take my top 3 teas to a local lab and just see how clean it is. So I had a check for cadmium, lead, and mercury, and 3 out of 4 came back contaminated with cadmium. And that really concerned me, because I had thought, there are a trillion tea companies out there, and not all of them, well, they're supposed to test, and the rules are in place, the laws are in place supposedly to make it such, but some of them just are contaminated. Anywhere where industry is, or the acid rain can drop, is where it can be contaminated. Anyway, that is why I started the company, because I thought, I don't want to drink this. I mean, cadmium, that's pretty bad for you. And it just bioaccumulates in your cells over the years. So I thought, if I'm going to honor my body, and I don't ever want to get cancer again, I mean, at least not this way, and I drink so much tea, and I don't know where I can get tea that's clean. I'll never know unless I just test it myself. I'm going to start my own tea company. So the tea I have is clean. If I cannot get certification from the farmers or the distributors that I go through, it took me 2 years to get my sourcing, by the way, because I was so worried about it. But I will third-party test it myself just to make sure. And if the farm can't afford to test it and they can't get an organic certification, that's when I for sure will do the testing, but I know what their farming practices are in fair trade. So that's how I started cupofjoytea.com, and I do have some tea at Wiseacre and Karen's Kitchen and the Golden Fig on Grand and Urban Olive and Vine and Tailor Made Nutrition and Woodbury, but I do sell mostly online, so you can find it there.
Yeah. And, I've drank your tea and I love your tea. And I just love the story behind it too, is how, you were doing your best and you recognize that this is something that you're passionate about, so let's take it to the next level, right? A
Yeah.
lot of companies, maybe they mean the best, but there are certain circumstances where they can't actually get a truly clean product. So you decided just to take matters into your own hands. And, with that too, the tea that you have, I mean, you have awesome combinations. And, I personally, I still have some of your tea, and I have those little, the tea balls you put the loose leaf tea in. So
Yep.
I appreciate everything that you do and that you're doing with cupofjoytea.com. And I'll put the info and the details of this episode. I have one more question for you, and I ask this question to every single guest, and then we'll wrap up after that. So what is the one thing or the one piece of information, piece of wisdom you would leave all of our listeners with today?
When I think about that, the first thing that comes to mind is you have to live it well. And by honoring yourself, you honor others because you inspire others. And that's it.
That is so powerful, right? We have one life to live. And when we're operating at our highest frequency and our best health, we're going to uplift those that we surround ourselves with. That's a powerful message. I thank you so much, Joy, not only for being on the podcast, for donating your time today, but just for everything that you do when it comes to food and just helping other people, understand that they can be empowered and they can really find ways to nourish themselves in the best way possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Awesome. And for all of our listeners, as always, until next time, keep inspiring. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Inspire Life podcast today. Please like, comment, and subscribe on whatever channel it is you're listening in on today. Also, if you're on iTunes, please write us a review. That way, Dr. Mel and I can continue to get the word out to more people to help everyone improve their lives and accomplish their health and wellness goals. Also, don't forget to jump on over to Facebook and join the Inspired Living community. There, Dr. Mel and I share all of our content to help you continue to live your most inspired and thriving life. And until next time, keep inspiring.